Hi and welcome to the DIY Video Studio channel. Today I'm testing 6 popular pop filters for the Blue Yeti USB microphone. So, do you need a pop filter when using a Blue Yeti? Well, unless you're going to put a little bit of distance between you and the microphone, yes, you probably do. That's why I'm checking some of the most popular Blue Yeti pop filters at around $10 each, give or take a few dollars. But I'm also going to be including this metal screen pop filter to check whether it's worth paying about 3 times as much. I want to say first though that this is an independent test. This video isn't sponsored and I've not received any free products that might influence my opinion. I bought all 6 pop filters with my own money, and they are the Mudder foam microphone windscreen, the Moukey metal mesh and fabric windscreen filter, the Sunmns furry windscreen, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly, the Aokeo microphone fabric mesh pop filter, the Aokeo metal mesh pop filter, and finally the Gator Frameworks metal screen pop filter. The Mudder is a simple foam windscreen and is specifically designed for the Blue Yeti and Yeti Pro. It slips snugly over the Yeti's metal grille and will stay in place even if the microphone is inverted. The Moukey metal panel pop filter comes with 2 plastic mounting rings. For the Yeti, use the larger one. It slips onto the Yeti's body between the logo plate and the grille. Unfortunately, the screw bolt is immediately above the Yeti's gain knob, which makes gain adjustment a little fiddly. The pop filter bolts onto the mounting ring and sits in front of the Yeti's grille. Unfortunately, the gap between the pop filter and the mic is fixed, and there's not much of it either. The Sunmns furry windscreen, like the Mudder foam windscreen, slips over the Blue Yeti's grille. The elasticated neck helps to keep it in place, even when the mic is inverted. It's essentially a furry dead cat for the Blue Yeti. The Aokeo circular fabric mesh pop screen is based on a design that's been around for many years, that's effective, reliable, and inexpensive. It's a circular ring, usually plastic, with nylon fabric stretched across it. The Aokeo fabric pop filter is on a gooseneck that is flexible but stiff enough to stay in place. Having used this type of pop filter before, I think it could perform quite well. The Aokeo metal mesh windscreen is different. It's not circular. Instead, it's a curved rectangular thin metal grille that's connected to a gooseneck that clamps onto the desktop stand or a boom arm. Again, it's flexible but stiff enough so that the pop filter doesn't sag. Finally, the Gator Frameworks metal screen pop filter is more expensive than the rest here, but mid-priced compared to other professional studio pop filters. It's a thin disc of metal with a diamond grille pattern stamped into it. But if you take a closer look at those holes, you'll see that they're not true diamond shapes. The bottom is curved and it also has an angle to it. That's the secret to how it works. It deflects the moving air down and away from the microphone while letting the sound through. The pop filter is on a gooseneck and, like the others, it's flexible but it's stiff enough to stay in place. The test will be recorded in my voice booth. Obviously, I'll be using a Blue Yeti microphone, which is the Blackout edition. The Yeti is inverted and on a Radius 3 shock mount and an InnoGear large microphone boom arm. If you're interested in any of those products, I'll put affiliate links in the description. If you use any of them, I'll earn a commission, and thank you. It helps me make more of these videos. In each test, I'll be 6 inches from the microphone, and where possible, the pop filter will be 4 inches in front of the mic. That might be slightly closer than you'll be to your Blue Yeti, but it will help to show how good these pop filters are. I'll also make a control recording without a pop filter, which will be the baseline against which I'll compare each of these filters. So let's get on with the test by reading Peter Piper, which should provide lots of plosives to test these pop filters.
Right, this is the control, no pop filter or windshield on the microphone. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? This is the mud of foam windscreen. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? This is the Moukey metal mesh and fabric windscreen filter. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? This is the Sunmns furry windscreen. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? This is the Aokeo fabric microphone pop filter. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? This is the Aokeo metal mesh pop filter. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? This is the Gator Frameworks metal screen pop filter. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked?
So which pop filter did you like best? I'd really be interested to hear about your preference and what type of work you'll be using it for. Also, is it worth paying the extra amount for the professional metal screen pop filter? Let me know in the comments. All those test recordings were done with me at 6 inches from the Blue Yeti, so I could really stress each of the pop filters. Later on, I also recorded some tests at about 10 inches from the mic. At that distance, even the foam windscreen was okay, so if you'll be speaking at a normal level, not getting too excited, and don't need to get too close to the microphone, even the mud of foam windscreen should be fine. At least most of the time. But if you want to be certain your recordings will be pop-free, choose one of the better performers. Which brings me to what I thought of the pop filters. To me, it was no surprise that the best performers were the Aokeo fabric mesh pop filter and the Gator Frameworks metal screen pop filter. They were almost equal in preventing pops, but I did think that the Gator Frameworks pop filter was slightly ahead. However, what put clear water between these two pop filters was the better usability of the Gator Frameworks filter. Not only did it block all of the pops, but the lack of an outer ring and the transparency of the screen meant I could see through it and read a script. This is what I mean. If I hold up the Gator Frameworks filter, you can see my hand, or even my face. But if I do the same thing with the Aokeo fabric mesh filter, it's much more difficult to see my hand or my face. But when it comes to which of these offers the best value, we need to remember that the Aokeo fabric filter was a great performer, and it's about a third of the cost of the Gator Frameworks pop filter. So which of these is the best? For me, because I record voiceovers for broadcast, I would use the Gator, but if cost is important to you and you aren't going to read from a script, then it's difficult to knock the Aokeo. Those two were the best performers, but I'd highly commend the Sunmns furry windscreen. It performed well, and at the time of writing, it is the same price as the Aokeo fabric pop filter, plus it doesn't obscure your view if you need to read a script. That's it. Please like, share and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. It helps me make more. And to make sure you don't miss any, hit that notification bell. Finally, you can find an in-depth article on these pop filters on DIYVideoStudio.com. I'll put a link in the description. I wish you well and look forward to seeing you again next time.